All right, so let's look at those examples. So the first ones we had, I said solve by factoring because obviously they're factorable. So if I label my A, B, and C, probably should have used a different color. I guess I will. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to get 6, positive 6, and add together to get negative 5. So I think that's actually going to be negative 2 and negative 3. Okay, now those aren't my answers, so I should be careful writing that. That tells me that we have x minus 2 times x minus 3 equals 0. So our answers are actually 2 and 3. Okay, if I look at this one, two numbers that multiply to get 12 and add to get 1. Multiply to negative 12 and add to get 1. So I think those two answers, I don't know why my screen just went black, but that's okay, would be positive 4 and negative 3. And again, I don't want to think that those are my answers, but what that tells me is that I have x plus 4 and x minus 3 equals 0. So my two answers would be negative 4 and positive 3. Now remember with these, what I'm doing here is separating and solving each of these. And that's where my answers are coming from. Okay, so those are the two with factoring. So if we go down here and look at the two with quadratic formula, again, I'm going to label my A, my B, and my C. I'm going to start using the quadratic formula. Negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Okay, so I'm going to do negative B. So B is positive 4, so that would be negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times A, which is 3, times C, which is 2. Okay, all over 2 times A. So I take that a step further here. That gives me negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus, and look what we're going to have here, 12, 24 all over 6, which is negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 8 over 6. Okay, now remember what I said before. Sometimes you don't have a nice square root. Negative 8 is not a nice square root. In fact, you can't have a negative under the square root. And that's where imaginary numbers come in. We're not going to get into imaginary numbers. You will in Algebra 2. So we can leave this answer just like it is right there. Okay? So that's our answer for that one. If we look at the second one here, I go down, I have my A, my B, and my C. So it's opposite of B, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A, which is negative 1 when there's nothing there, comes 18 all over 2 times negative 1. Negatives are fine as long as they don't end up as our final answer inside the square root. Okay, so that'd be negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 36. Now I have two negatives here, so basically that's plus 72 all over negative 2. So that would be negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 108, which is not going to be a nice square root. Kind of nice how that made that a rectangle. What I could do now is actually do the factor tree for this, and you don't have to do this. I'm just showing you, because the square root of 108, if I factor tree that, I could get 3 and 36, and then that would be 6 and 6. So basically this would turn into 3, sorry, if you have a date, you can go out 6 root 3. Okay, so if I go again from here, and again, I don't expect you to know how to do this, but it's negative 6 plus or minus 6 root 3 over negative 2. Now, because there's a coefficient in front of the square root, I can kind of simplify both those things. So negative 6 divided by negative 2 is 3. 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3 root 3. So my answer could look like that, which is a lot of 3's.